Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So my name is Karabasitole, and in today's video we are going to be focusing on residency. I didn't do module 1A because it's something very simple, just introducing you to taxation, but I do feel like residency is important because remember, we are calculating gross income and we need to know who do we tax. So for residents, we tax them on their worldwide earnings, and then for non-residents, we tax them on a source base, right? So if income is coming from a source in South Africa, then we will tax that amount of money. So it then becomes important for us to understand when a person is considered to be a resident and when the person is not a resident and when they cease to be a resident, right? So for a natural person, they can be a resident in 3 cases. If they're an ordinarily resident of South Africa, or they can be a resident by virtue of the physical presence test, the PPT test, and this excludes anyone who is a resident of another country, right, due to double tax agreements. So for second year level, they will most probably tell you that ignore double taxation agreements. And the reason being that if there's a double taxation agreement, then you are exclusively a resident of that country, right? So you first start with ordinarily resident and you test if that natural person is not a resident by virtue of being an ordinarily resident, right? So the first thing in exam technique that you have to write is that ordinarily resident is not defined in the Income Tax Act. That gets you a mark. And then you go on further to say, because it's not defined, we will look into case laws to understand what it means. Then there are 2 case laws that you need to state. We have the Cohen case and the Cattle case. The Cohen case, there are 2 principles that it gives you. It tells you that a person is an ordinarily resident in the country in which they consider to be their real home, and in which they will return from any wanderings that they have. Wanderings means you are moving away from a certain place. So you return to South Africa from wandering to America, for instance. So whatever home they consider to be their real home. So as you read the scenario, you need to look at, does the person want to come back to South Africa? Does the person have family in South Africa? Because that would be some of the indicators that tell you that this is the person's real home, apart from that they return to from wanderings, right? So that's what Cohen tells us. Cattle tells us that that is their principal home. So they might go to America and rent out a place for some amount of time. However, in South Africa, they might have a house. So whichever one is their principal home, and wherever it is, that is where they would be a resident in, right? And it also says that this is their real home despite temporary absences. So this person could be absent in South Africa for some amount of time. Just because you are a resident doesn't mean that you're not allowed to visit other countries, either for entertainment reasons, for business reasons. You can go to other countries. However, you always return to South Africa, right? And then we'll consider South Africa to be a real home. So those are the 2 cases you need to list in the ordinarily resident, right? Obviously, you list the case and you apply it, right, based on the scenario, and you conclude. And then we have a person who can be a resident of South Africa by means of the PPT test, which is the physical presence test, right? The first requirement is that you must not be an ordinarily resident. So that's where you start. You start from proving that the person is not an ordinarily resident of South Africa. So Cohen and Cattle does not apply. And then you go on to say, these are the requirements that I need to consider for this person to be a resident as per PPT test, right? So the first the first requirement is being in South Africa for greater than 91 days, right? So to remember this, just remember 91, 915, 6 years, right? So in the current year, you must have been in South Africa for greater than 91 days. Then 1 year already down, 2 years left in the 6 years that I just said. Then 5 years, you must have been in South Africa for 91 days in each of those 5 years. And then you must have been in South Africa for 915 days in the past 5 years after the current year. That's why I say 91, 915, and 6 years. right? 1 year being the current year, and then 5 years being the year after the current year. And then we have the 330-day test, right? I did a video explaining this and how it works. So if you don't understand how it works, please watch that video. It's like 3 minutes long, I think. So what the 330-day rule does essentially is that it breaks the PPT test, because for the PPT test, let's say in this year, right? Let's say your year or the year starts on the 31st of March 2023 and it ends on the 1st of April 2024, and you meet the PPT test on the 1st of September 2023. They are going to text you. They're going to text you for the whole year. So even though you met the PPT test on the 1st of September 2023, they're going to consider you to have been a resident from the beginning of the period, right? And then you're going to continue to be a resident even if you leave until you meet the 330-day rule, right? So the 330-day rule just states that you must have been outside South Africa for a number of continuous 330 days for them to stop considering you as a non-resident, right? So basically what will happen is you met the test here, so we consider you to be a resident from the start. So any income you had from the 31st of July, from the 31st of March till the year end will be fully taxed worldwide income, right? And then the year ends, let's say you leave South Africa, right? Let's say you leave South Africa here May 2024, so you leave SA. Just because you left SA does not immediately mean that you stop being a resident, right? So you will stop being a resident after you meet the 330-day rule. So we have to count from this very day up until wherever you're doing the PPT test and see if you have met 330 days continuously being outside of South Africa, right? Okay, I'm not counting the numbers, but let's say you met it on, okay, it's not going to be in December. So let's say December, guys, just for having an example, right? Let's say you met this in December, right? So after you've met this in December, you are going to be considered a non-resident from the day after you left, right? So if it's confusing you, just go to my example. Basically, PPT test, you become a resident. Once you meet the PPT test, you become a resident of that country from the very start of that year. And then you continue to be a resident of that country up until a time where you meet the 330-day rule. The 330-day rule says you must have been outside South Africa for a continuous 330 days, right? So once you have met the 330 days, we will now go back and look at when did you leave, and then consider you a non-resident from the day after you left, right? So if you did not meet the PPT test, then you're just going to continue being a resident of South Africa until you meet it, right? And then for other than natural persons, so for companies, for instance, you must have a place of effective management in South Africa. So place of effective management is where key management is, right, and where primary decisions are made. So if you are a firm, we'll look at where is your main company at, right, and where are these key decisions about your company being made. Are they being made in South Africa, or are they being made in the UK, for instance? If they are being made in South Africa, then you're a resident of South Africa, right? And then, yeah, guys, that is residency. I hope this helped.